Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Donaher, and I'm a Director of Client Services here at Radius. Thanks to everybody for attending today's webinar, where you'll hear about how to get the most out of your customer experience program. The webinar today will be given by two of my colleagues, Jensen and Mike Jennings, who are both Vice Presidents here at Radius, and who both have a great deal of experience with customer experience across a number of different industries. We have scheduled 45 minutes maximum for this webinar. There'll be a few polls throughout that are interactive to gauge your experiences on certain related topics. And if you have a specific question, feel free to type it into the software, onto the screen in front of you. Nobody's phone will be unmuted, so if you do have a question, please just type it in there. Of the 45 minutes we have allotted, Mike and Eric will speak for about 30 minutes or so we should have some time for Q&A at the end. The first presenter will be Mike, and then Eric will come on, and then I will come back in at the end of this for the Q&A. So Mike, take it away.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning, good afternoon or evening, wherever in the world you may be today. Thanks for joining us once again. I'm Mike Jennings, and today we're talking about customer experience, or CX for short. We intend to provide you with some things to think about as you assess your current program or are in the process of launching a CX program, as many of you may be doing. I'll start by discussing some of the challenges businesses face that prompt action, define CX, and outline the best-in-class components of a CX program. Then Eric will take us through a look at the pros and cons of software solutions, what differentiates a good program with a great program, and walk us through a case study. So first, why are we here? Why are we concerned about the customer experience? I've had clients come to me and say, well, Mike, I'm offering products and services that are desired and my customers are happy. Isn't that sufficient? Well, it's a good start, but I feel that your efforts should also include how we're looking at customers in terms of interacting with the company as a whole. So each touch before, during, and after that sale, identifying successes to capitalize on through marketing efforts, identifying pain points, even if they appear to be a minor issue, you'll want to know and take action to make sure there's no flare-ups and to limit competitor opportunities against you. And also, a next-level program will help you identify unfulfilled needs in the marketplace, from process changes to new product offerings. So in summary today, you should come away with 4 key things to a successful CX program. These aspects are: 1, that your program must be holistic to capture the full customer experience. 2, that your program must be structured and designed for action. 3, that your program needs to be continually refreshed. And 4, that your program is communicated and rolled out effectively. So we all face a myriad of challenges every day, coming internally from and externally to the organization. And we ask ourselves, what's most important from all of these things? Where do I start? Where do I even begin? A solid understanding of customers can help prioritize what's most important for you and your organization. We need to understand what activities will drive repeat business, reduce churn, protect us from competitor actions, enhance our cross-selling opportunities, and ensure that we receive positive reviews and recommendations from people who interact with us. So, should we focus on hyper-personalized experience or marketing campaigns, or maybe ensuring customer privacy? These things can all be answered via CX. But what exactly is the customer experience? I've heard a lot of different descriptors on this, and we'll attempt to define that now. So, customer experience is the product of an interaction between an organization and a customer over the duration of their relationship. This interaction includes multiple points along that relationship. from initial attraction, awareness, and discovery, to cultivation, advocacy, and purchase, as well as the ongoing use of a product or service and support that you provide. Measured by the individual's experience during all points of contact against the individual's expectations. Includes whether or not the customer is able to achieve what they set out to do, how much effort they had to put in to achieve it, and how they feel during and after that process. Each interaction has these three main areas that overlap to create a comprehensive view of the experience. Ideally, you're capturing this for all interactions so that strategies and tactics can be developed on an interwoven, holistic basis. Everyone has a CX vision. Clearly, most organizations that deem themselves customer-centric or thinking in this manner already have something in place or understand that it is needed. It may even be in process. But there's a lot to consider when going down this road, and it can be overwhelming. So it's critical to success to start with a vision and follow through completely and exhaustively. Oftentimes, we see that there's a rush to implement something, basically anything to get some feedback and figure out what to do with it later. Let's just get that feedback and we'll figure it out. We highly recommend not doing this, but developing a deep learning program prior to formal launch to ensure success for all interactions, all customers, all processes. So where to start? Next, we'll take a look at some key components of a CX program and what to think about. But first, we have our first poll question for you to consider. Which of the following elements are important to a CX program? We have some options there. Please select all that apply. Just give you a few moments to complete that. Okay, so the results are in, and it looks like most of you agree with the what we're going to recommend today is that all of these things are very important to a comprehensive, holistic CX program. So next, we'll look at phases of a CX program. We mentioned earlier about a deep learning program prior to launch. This initiative would include things that we have, as we have listed here, things like reviewing previous research studies or surveys. What did we learn from those? We'll want to take that into the start of a program. Conducting one-on-ones with stakeholders, including senior-level team members, but also those in the trenches, such as those in the call center, your sales force, installation service teams, etc., in order to get an internal view of processes and experiences. Getting that internal view is critical. We'll also want to measure experiences with lapsed customers and identifying how to mitigate their churn. Developing a hypothesized loyalty or customer satisfaction model is also something we should include. This model would be telling us what we feel is important and impacting experience and what levers we feel will positively impact this experience. We might also initiate exploratory qualitative work to capture the customer view of the experience. Does it align with our internal view? Is the language used by customers the same as that used internally? This work will be used to refine the hypothesized model that we've constructed. We also suggest using relationship or perception studies to understand satisfaction and loyalty among those not necessarily interacting directly with our company on a regular basis. This would also look outward at competitors. And of course, ongoing transactional studies, I know many of you mentioned that in the poll. That's used to measure satisfaction at specific moments in time, the sign up, the sale, post-visit or installation, post-servicing and support, etc., all of those touches. We also recommend regular qualitative work comes into play to help explain the why We'll often bring customers in to do a deep dive to better understand the quantitative results we're seeing, or regarding ad hoc topics such as a new offering, new product, and how it might impact processes and the experience for the customers. All of this work serves to provide rich information from which to act on across the organization. Next are some best practices we'd like to touch on. First is to deploy your initiative company-wide in a formal and consistent manner. Include input from all process owners, departments, and at all levels. Make sure your organization has the ability and desire, specifically desire, to act on the insights that we receive. Got to make sure that there's resources in place to revise the processes, mitigate issues, promote the strengths, and have C-suite support all along the way. We also suggest preparing a platform or a mechanism for continuous monitoring of performance and tracking against targets. Identifying a relevant business outcome and behaviors that represent that outcome. Use multiple indicators, especially for key metrics like loyalty. So include things such as Net Promoter Score, affinity, and overall satisfaction. Don't rely on a single metric. And ensure the results not only assess performance, but are also diagnostic in nature. This speaks to the actionability of our results. Next, we'll cover some things to think about when designing your survey. We generally recommend asking overall high-level measures first, then specific diagnostic areas afterward. This provides a more accurate gauge of the overall metrics, since respondents should be considering the relationship in totality. If the opposite's done, when they evaluate the overall measures, they'll be thinking specifically about the areas you just asked them about. This can yield unwanted issues, such as leading to an artificially high model fit, losing the ability to determine if we may have missed some areas in the process, and it can taint the results depending on how questions that delve into the areas are phrased. We also suggest using fully labeled semantic scales. They allow us to know what a particular rating represents. For example, with a 7-point scale with endpoint anchors, we don't know what a 6 represents. Also, you should have a sufficient number of scale points to capture variability, yet not so many as to overwhelm respondents. And rather than capturing satisfaction, assess performance using a scale such as excellent to poor, as opposed to very satisfied to very dissatisfied. Also, it's important to note that you do not need to have a neutral response option. There's flexibility around that. And finally, be sure to have a don't know option in your survey, as some respondents may not have enough experience to rate a particular aspect of that process. So to touch on the hypothesized model we cited earlier, it's important to understand what comprises a strong and actionable model. Characteristics of this include being hierarchical in nature. In other words, showing an overall metric such as loyalty and how it's impacted by various factors, each of which in turn is impacted by other various factors. Ensuring that the factors and items themselves are included in the model, make sure that they're independent from one another, and that we are measuring a single concept or idea. Statements should not combine ideas such as a rating of information being accurate, and finally, keep these separate. Make sure that what we're measuring is specific and can be clearly understood by the respondents. Qualitative work helps with this, but include an explanation if there's any risk of confusion. Be sure to include emotional brand-related attributes, such as being an innovative company, meets my needs, I trust information I receive from the company, so forth, as well as concrete, rational attributes, such as the price paid, the range of product options, and helpfulness of support. So to reiterate, in order to have a successful CX program, you must ensure that your program is holistic to capture the full experience. Your program is designed for action. Your program is continually refreshed and updated, and that the program is part of your organization's DNA. Now I'd like to hand off the balance of today's webinar to Eric to address how actionability, refreshing the program, and communication is critical to a successful CX program.
Hey, thanks, Mike, and hello to everyone out there. So we've got some great data, as we just saw. We just saw some great data that we can put together, and all seems well and good, but you know that the needle still isn't moving, and that's the real point of pain. So the question is, are people really paying attention? How can I get those people involved and excited about the customer experience? And a potential solution, it's a good solution, is to prepare a platform or mechanism for the continuous monitoring of performance. Now this does seem like a good start. So software platforms really are a good start, and it certainly sets the foundation. But let's look at a review of the must-haves when it comes to a reporting platform. It must be real-time, giving you the ability to aggregate data and apply sophisticated statistical analytic techniques in real time. It also must be easy to use. I find that the best designs are those that are designed by users for users. It must also have drill-down capability. With one click, you should have the ability to dive into a full survey for full click-through access. If it doesn't have that, then you're really missing out on a lot. You should also be able to analyze all the data, including the open ends, immediately categorizing those open ends through a built-in text analytics engine. And finally, and very importantly, is the elevation tool, which allows any employee to escalate an issue that may be a customer experience obstacle. So now you're empowered by software. Not the solution in and of itself, but it is a good start. But you find the needle still isn't moving. You're still struggling. I've spent, and you're asking this question, hey, I've spent a lot of money on this software, and I have tons of data and don't know what to do. So there's a disconnect, a real disconnect, and you're struggling, overwhelmed by data, spending a lot of money. You find out that a well-written survey and plug-and-play software really isn't all that's needed for CX excellence. You need more than that. Nearly all organizations, maybe even yours, are still struggling to drive real gains. When asked how effective these same programs are in transforming their business, 84% of professionals admitted they were still struggling to make progress in their programs. Now we're going to go to another poll. Okay, this poll is, how would you describe your current CX program? Please select one. Is it very successful? A good program, it could be better, not great, needs work, or it doesn't even exist. So take some time to answer that question, and we'll look at the results shortly. Okay, well, let's look at this. So a third of you, well, actually 0% say it's very successful. That in and of itself is very, very telling. A third of you say it's a good program, but could be better. And nearly half of you, actually only about 1 in 4 says it's great, but it needs work, but nearly half of you, 43%, 2 in 5 or even more, says it doesn't even exist yet. So I guess this is a great webinar for you to be part of. So we're going to go through the elements that really do make up for a great program. So we can go to that next slide. So what does the research indicate? Some research was done among companies with 500 million or more in revenue, and this research even indicates more signs of struggle. Only 15% of U.S. companies describe their voice as a customer program as very successful. So, you know, we thought that was a pretty low number, but the number here that we see is even lower. So look, there's a real struggle that we have here, right? Fully 80% say they're merely collectors and analyzers versus change agents. So all you're doing is collecting data. You're just overwhelmed with it. You're not sure even what to do with it. Only 1/3 of companies say they're good at implementing positive change in their organization using voice of the customer insight. So why the disconnect? What's the reason for all of this trouble? Why isn't it actionable? Because it's not actionable. That is the challenge. More data and a slick reporting tool won't impact the change. Structured customer experience action framework will, and it's critical, very critical, to ensure that the organization has the ability to act on the insights and resources to revise those processes, mitigate issues, and promote strengths throughout the organization. So let's look at a review of some of the action basics. The inner loop and an outer loop. The inner loop lets the frontline employees and teams hear both positive and constructive feedback directly and immediately from customers. The inner loop enables the frontline to implement whatever changes they can make on their own. The outer loop, and its explicit purpose, is to prioritize and support the kind of customer-friendly changes that employees and teams cannot make on their own. But there's an implicit purpose as well to the outer loop. And this is really key. An effective outer loop makes employees feel supported. It gives them voice in the firm's priorities. It creates confidence that the company's priorities support customer centricity and that leadership is truly putting its money where its mouth is. Now, a word of warning, and I hear this from clients when I meet with clients throughout. It's important that you just don't set up a system for inner and outer loop unless it's fully designed with protocols and resources that are fully in place. Not being able to implement a proper, fully implemented closed loop system will only further frustrate your customers and lead to an even worse customer experience. Make sure, this is very important, make sure a fully designed system is in place prior to any closed loop implementation. So not only does a structured CX framework need a closed loop system to help manage the end-to-end CX recovery, it also needs several other items that are critical to its success. You need to make sense of all the data, and this is actually often done through internal process improvement workshops. So in addition to that closed loop system, root cause analytics. This helps to identify and address the real issues affecting your business. Key driver analysis is an approach that can help you identify what truly affects customer behavior and what is truly important to your customers. Best practice is a simulator tool based off the key driver analysis to play what-if scenarios. The third point is that it must be motivational. That allows management to instantly recognize top performers. Fourth, social media integration is another important element. And really what social media integration does, it's really a marriage of what people are saying to you in the survey. So they're going to say to you a number of different things. So it's that marriage between what they're saying to you in the surveys and what they're saying about you in social media. So that marriage between those two elements is very, very critical to give you an even better full picture of your customers and what they're saying. Finally, employee development, which includes a suite of tools for training to make customer experience coaching process effective, easy, and fun. Now, another critical element is rolling out the results. It is critical to have senior management buy-in and support of the program. In my experience, in nearly 30 years experience that I've seen, for every successful CX program, there is always C-suite support. It is critical to having any program that's going to be successful. Communication across the entire organization helps to ensure the results are used when possible. And if it makes sense, communication should come from senior management. Communication should also occur in stages to build excitement and corporate acceptance throughout. Very specific action plans for improvement should be provided to business leaders. So, we often work with clients to set overall targets both for organization as well as by different business units to ensure the research is being leveraged to the full extent possible. So we do provide that hands-on experience. So how have we done this for companies? So I'm going to share this case study. We're really excited about this case study because we really helped an organization that was struggling to move the needle. They were spending millions of dollars on their program, putting a lot of effort into and money into a reporting platform, but they were still struggling. This was a financial services client. Their program was in place for 3 to 4 years, but again, they had no movement of scores. They had very limited actionability, and they had little or no revenue consequences. They were just spending money, and it was going for no good. So they turned to us and they said, "Hey, you know what? We're struggling here. We're not moving the needle. We're spending money on stuff that just is making no difference." So they really wanted to come. They came to us and they said, "Hey, can you help us understand the right transactions at the right time in the right manner? Can you determine the KPIs within the context of the customer journey? Can you manage," and this is the real important one, "can you manage and make actionable a huge amount of information from the survey work that we're getting? And fourth, can you help us move the needle and realize real revenue gains?" So, how did we do it and what did we learn? Well, we first needed to better understand their key concerns and business challenges. We did this by conducting a series of focus groups and individual interviews with a myriad of audiences, including internal process owners and stakeholders, consumers, and business customers. We also reviewed their previous customer journey maps, so we didn't have to just do our own maps. We looked at a previous journey map and other research. We made necessary changes where they were needed. This was followed by the design of relationship-based tracking survey. That also included a short battery brand questions. Also designed was a series of ongoing transactional surveys based upon the journey map, addressing the key moments that matter to customers. An onboarding and attrition survey was also key to the implementation of this, again, holistic program. We want to carry that whole customer experience. Finally, a competitor survey, very important to this, is to better understand how the organization was doing compared to its key competitors. That was also implemented in our program. Finally, a reporting platform with a closed-loop system was employed. This was followed by internal process improvement workshops and structured communication plan rollout. Now, what did the client organization learn? First of all, real gaps were identified in the delivery of services. The organization was now able to identify what was truly having a negative effect on customer experience. Gaps in service delivery were identified, leading to further qualitative research to carry out the root cause of the problem. The closed-loop system was implemented, addressing both inner and outer loop concerns, and customer concerns were now being addressed in real time. As a foundation, a powerful self-service platform that included a robust and holistic closed-loop system was added to their platform. This included specific stages, names, responsibilities, accountability, and organization-changing actions. Without this particular platform, without this system, this program would have fallen flat, lacking any real actionability. Another key to the success of the program was to keep it up to date, to refresh it for what is truly affecting the customer experience. KPIs, as you know, oftentimes change, so we needed to revisit these, sometimes once, maybe even twice a year. As was evident here, it's critical to work with your internal teams to understand why a particular KPI is declining or improving. And you can do this via adding or changing additional questions in the survey or further qualitative or other research. Cogent insight reporting with clear implications and recommendations is critical to getting the word out on what specifically is needed to get done to move the needle. These reports provided the client with a regularly scheduled interval for bringing in the various teams to both collaborate, review the data, discuss what it means, and also develop action plans from the learning. Very, very key and critical. Lastly, was our help in communicating the program and the results through the organization. The real result, action. This is why I'm so excited about this case study. We were really able to help this organization. The organization currently uses the study to continually guide internal teams for process improvement, issue resolution, including closed-loop feedback, communications and marketing, employee incentives, as well as a roll-up to corporate scorecards. The numbers, and these are impressive numbers, they finally got the needle to move. 15% increase in customer experience, real revenue savings in millions of dollars that can be tied back to customer-driven process improvements. Our clients moved from just being data gatherers to real change agents for the organization. In summary, the key aspects to a successful customer experience program are that your program must be holistic, after that full customer experience. Your program must be structured and designed for action. Your program must be continually refreshed, and it must be communicated and rolled out effectively as part of your organization's DNA. And that concludes our presentation. Are there any questions that either Mike or I can address?
Well, thanks, guys. I do have a couple of questions that have come through as people have been watching. The first one is around journey mapping. Who would you recommend reaching out to when designing the most effective journey map?
Yeah, that's a great question. Whoever asked that question, it's a great question. So I would recommend utilizing both customers and internal management in separate sessions, separate discovery sessions, and those are typically like 3 to 4 hours each, half day basically, to help inform the customer journey. Now, so you have both the internal and the external read, but I would also recommend a mystery shop of the customer journey process to get another point of view that really serves as confirmation for what the customers and management said.
Okay. Mike, anything to add to that, or next question?
Next question.
All right. Having employees in the initiative, is that optimal?
Yeah, I think we addressed that in here. It's critical for 2 reasons, at least 2 reasons, and Eric will chime in if you feel otherwise, but it's important to get there in, as part of the internal view, what they feel the customer experience is, and how their process affects that. But it also allows them to feel ownership of the process. That you're getting their buy-in because you're including them in the process, you're understanding their perspective, and incorporating that into any actions that take place going forward. So it really, really helps to get folks on board with what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I would just add that that's great, and I would just add that, you know, employees make great change agents, right? They're essential to the relationship as their front line. You know, they represent the company. They're company facing, they're customer facing rather. You know, the old adage goes, happy employees make for happy customers, for sure.
More questions coming in, guys. How does this framework apply to ingredient brands? You know, so we all know what ingredient branding is. Does the framework apply to ingredient brands?
Premium brands?
Ingredients. So by ingredient brands, and thank you, Georgiana, she means like MasterCard versus Bank of America on a credit card, or Intel and a Dell laptop ingredient brand.
Yeah.
And the question is, does the framework still apply?
Short answer,
I would say
yes.
yes.
Was that Eric?
Yeah, I would say yes. Yes, it does apply.
I mean, there may be a different or specific set of challenges. So when we work with folks setting one of these up or refining, we do work closely with all the internal stakeholders and the C-suite to understand what those specific challenges might be around their brand or their product. So some pieces may take a more prominent role, and others might not be as applicable.
Fair. There are quite a few questions here, so I'm going to move on. One question says, we have a low response rate to email surveys. We get higher response rate from phone surveys, but they're expensive and potentially time consuming. What's our experience with phone? Maybe a comment on methodology overall.
Well, as far as phone surveys go, yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that it's certainly a mode that you can use, the methodologies that you can use. If you've got good phone numbers, if the sample list is good, if the incidence is high, then you could be pretty effective in doing those. Having said that, you know, it's still very, very difficult getting through to people with all the spam calls that get through. So it's a large challenge. Let's just say that. If you're going to do a survey on the phone, it's also got to be fairly short. I find that it's kind of funny that sometimes the actual transaction interview takes longer than the transaction itself, and that usually shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, really, a lot of it depends on who your customers are, what you have available in your databases. So if you're dealing with a lot of folks who are interacting with you via phone, it might make more sense to interact with them in a survey via phone. If you're dealing with low-income people who may not have web access, that's a large part of your customers, then we'll certainly want to include phone as a piece of that.
Yep. More questions, guys. Can you talk more about the communications you consider helpful in making the rollout effective? I'm assuming the internal communications. Eric, I think this speaks to making sure that the C-suite are fully involved.
Yeah, I mean, the C-suite needs to be fully involved. In fact, you're going to need, if you don't have the C-suite fully involved, it's going to fail. The communication is going to fail. What you typically need, what I've seen in my experience, is at least one or two people just under the C-level to actually be like the real cheerleaders, the evangelists for the program. You need to really have somebody who has kind of that outgoing personality to really, engender people to follow them. So I think that's key. As I said earlier in the presentation too, it's a step-by-step thing. So you want to do it by step to kind of really engender kind of an excitement as things go forward. So I think that's key as well. But you need the C-suite, but you also need that second level, people who will really get more involved to really be excited about the program. That is key as well.
I mean, we see many clients appointing a person whose sole job is to oversee the CX component for the business. The director of CX is something you might see.
And I have one last question. It says if you have a platform in place, a reporting platform in place, but it does not include the feedback process that we talked about, can you add it? Or do we need to spend a new program? What's our experience there with the platforms?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It depends on the platform you have in place. So there's different kinds of platforms out there. There's ones that are less expensive and they tend to be a lot more rigid. There's other ones that tend to be more flexible and that you could add an additional component like we did in that case study. We added that additional component for the closed loop. That was a flexible, more expensive system. So, I mean, we've worked with clients in both cases where some just add a component because it's the flexible system, while others had to consider a new, more flexible platform because it was a very much do-it-yourself, very kind of bare bones and not very flexible solution.
Excellent. Well, everybody, that's the end of the webinar. There's no more questions. I hope you find that useful. There will be a link to this to be able to listen to it again and to have it. But thank you, everybody, for your attention and for your questions.